Okay, so quite often when you have a quadratic, second degree, and three terms, if there is no GCF, we want to try to factor this by grouping. Okay, so what you want to do is look at the factors of A times C. Okay, I'm going to make a little table over here to help me organize my thoughts. So the factors of A times C would be 3 times negative 6. So that's going to be negative 18. Okay, now I don't want just any random factors of negative 18. I want to find the ones that have a sum of the middle coefficient, or we call that B for quadratics, right? AX squared BX plus C. So A, B, and C. Okay, so this is where B is negative 7. So this is where I'm just going to kind of do some brainstorming. You can do this in your mind. This chart isn't required. Maybe you have another way to organize your thoughts. But first one that pops in my head is 6 times negative 3. Well, I'm going to find the sum of that. That's 3. That's not negative 7, so that's out. Even if I switch the signs around, right, I still don't have a sum of negative 7. Let's try 9 and 2. So 9 and negative 2 do give me negative 18, but when added together, I get 7. Nope. I'm getting close, though, right? All right, so sometimes this process is quick. Brainstorming this, sometimes it takes you a little while. Like I said, this is kind of optional. You can organize it in a table like this. All right, so now once you find these factors of A times C that add up to the middle term, what you want to do is kind of siphon it through this middle term and split this middle term. So watch this next step. This is an important part. 3x squared stays the same, but now negative 7, I'm going to write as negative 9 plus 2. Or I could write the 2 first, doesn't matter. So minus 9x plus 2x, and the minus 6 hasn't changed. I only changed the middle term. Okay? All right, after you split it, now we're just going to factor each of these groups by using GCF. So now think greatest common factor. I want to take the greatest common factor out of this group and the greatest common factor out of that group. I like to put a little line under it or a little bracket just to separate them. So you can just focus on this. Okay, so now I'm ignoring everything else. What's the common factor? 3 and an x. So that comes out. Okay, so 3x times x gives me x squared. 3x times a minus 3 gives me that. Always check as you go. Whatever sign you have in front of the next group always transfers down. Now take the 2 out of this group. So I can take a 2 out. What am I left with? 2 times x gives me that. 2 times minus 3 gives me that. Okay? If you're doing this right, and if it's factorable, we should now have a common factor in each group, which now I'm going to take out of that. So now x minus 3 comes out of both. And just like when you're extracting GCFs, it comes out and disappears. So this is one of my factors. The other one is right here, the 3x plus the 2. Okay, and we're done. All right. Remember, you always can check using FOIL to go back to see if you did it right. We could multiply this through and double check to make sure we get it. It'd actually be these steps kind of backwards because this is distributive property multiplied to get this, be back to where you're at. But you can always check. Okay. Okay, so let's give it a try. You definitely always have to use grouping when A is not 1. But if A is 1, you may remember a shortcut. Right now, I'm going to do all 3 of these the same way. But once I'm done, I'll show you the shortcut when A is 1. Okay, you can kind of just skip this middle step. You can go from here to here if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just do this for all 3 of those. Okay? All right, and the last one is just a binomial, so look for a GCF. Okay, give you a good 5 minutes to work on this. If you get stuck on one, move on to the next. Okay, don't spend 5 minutes in one problem. Just spend a minute or 2 on each problem and move on. Okay? All right, go ahead. Okay, this becomes a little more frequent in Chapter 2. Every now and again, factoring comes up in Chapter 1, so I'll make sure we're reviewing this a little bit. When it comes more frequent and just part of the problem, a small part of the problem, we'll probably take a day to make sure we're all caught up to speed on this. Okay, so for number 1, we're looking for factors of A times C, so that's negative 30, but I need to make sure it has a sum of negative 1. All right, so in this case, 6 and a 5 is going to get me to a 1 if one's positive, one's negative, right? So a negative 6 and a positive 5 gives me that negative 1. That is what I need to use to split this up now. So 2x squared, I'm going to put the 5x first this time just to switch it around and show you the difference. Any questions so far on what I just did? Factors of a times c that add up to b. Okay, once you find it, you take that and you split it up. Now it's just a matter of factoring out the GCF here and here. Okay, so here I can at least take an x out, and that's it. So we say x times 2x plus 5. All right, now on that beginning example, I said whatever this sign is has to transfer down. Here it was a positive, now it's a negative. So I got to make sure I put a minus here. 3 goes into both of these, so that's what I need to take out. 3 times 2x gives me 6x. Careful with this one. Remember, this is like a negative 3 when you distribute that. So negative times a positive will give me that negative. Check as you go. Okay. All right, and now this is the common factor. So this common factor comes out of both of them, and I'm left with the x minus 3. So there's one factor, and there's the other. So 2x plus 5 comes out. Kind of comes out like that. It's gone. X minus 3 remains. Okay, and of course, you could have these flip-flops like this. It's a product, right? Products can be in any order you want. Any questions on one? Okay, 2. Factors of negative 40 that have a sum of negative 3. So maybe you're going through and you're thinking 10, negative 4, and it's a sum of 6. That's fine. This is just a spot to brainstorm. But 8 and 5 get me to that 3. Negative 8, positive 5 gives me a sum of negative 3. Okay, so I'm going to split the middle term with those two. Like that. Take the GCF out of this group. Take the GCF out of this group. Transfer that positive down. 5 times minus 8 gives me minus 40. So there we go. X minus 8's in common again. So that's coming out of both of those. So the x minus 8 comes out. What am I left with? X plus 5. Okay, now you can do that every time. Here's the exception. When A is 1, like 2 and 3, A is 1. You could skip this step and go from here to here, if you've been taught that before. Once you find the factors of basically just negative 40 that add up to negative 3, you can take those and dump them in here and here. Okay? If you're not comfortable with that, then don't do it. Maybe you are and you were taught that before. Great. It's going to save you some time. All right? When you can't do that is when A is not 1, right? 2, 3, or something different here, 4. You can't use that shortcut. It doesn't work. I can't just take 6 and 5 and throw them in here. It didn't work. It's not the right answer. Okay? So here's the shortcut. What are factors of 36 that add up to 12? Anybody? What are the factors of 36 that add up to 12? Got it? 6 and 6. We need 2 of them, right? So 6 and 6. So you just throw them in right there, and you get your answer. There it is, factored. Okay, splitting the middle term would work too, but you don't always need it. All right, last one. Now we've got a GCF. I can take a 5 out, and we just practiced GCF through this, so hopefully you're getting good at this. Take a 5 and an X out. So here's the answer to this one. Multiply as you go and check, and then 5x times 6 would give me that 30x. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at our OTI from yesterday. We'll take a few questions. Here's 12. Yes, the point is on the graph For A, B, no, it is not on the graph. 20. X-intercepts. There's two of them. They put them in one coordinate. You probably want to break it up. 2, 0, and then negative 2, 0. So you take the square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. Y-intercept 16. 22. Okay. 24. X-intercepts, they have 8/3 here, which also is 2 2/3, or 2.7. Y-intercept is 8. Okay, 26, the last even. Here's the X-intercept, 1/2. And the Y-intercept there was none. You got a square -1, so that's how we react to that. There is no Y-intercepts. Okay. All right, there's a question on 2931, so I'll address that right now too. So here you go. Here's your feedback. Pay attention. These are good quiz-like questions. 29, this is the X-intercept work, right? When you let Y equal 0, that means this is the X-intercepts. Okay, and then we got to know how to solve this. We got to try to factor this. So we took the GCF out of 2x squared, and then we use the zero product law. We have to set that equal to 0. They kind of skipped that step. So we're going to say 2x squared equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. And then solve those two equations. Okay, so divide by 2. Take the square root of both sides. So once you take the square root, we get x equals 0. Okay, for this other one, we just add 2. So that's why we have two separate x-intercepts, here and here. Okay. All right, the y-intercept is a little bit easier. Plugging in 0 for x typically is, okay, we end up with 0, the origin. All right, 31. This is the x-intercept work. 0 for y goes here, and then the math's pretty easy, right? Just add the x over to get to that step, 6, 0. All right, the only thing that may have tripped some of you up here on 31 is when you find the y-intercepts at the end, some of us keep forgetting to take this. When you take the square root, we're forgetting the plus or minus. Okay, so we got to remember to do that. Remember just the basic thing. If I had like x squared equals 25, let's just try something real basic. There's two answers to that, right? 5 squared gives me that, but so does -5 squared gives me that. So when we take the square root, we got to consider both of those as solutions to that. Okay.